of time. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Find me. Time after time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting for you. Time after time, oh, time after time, oh, time after time. Time after time, oh, time after time. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Find me. Time after time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting for you. Time after time, don't you know? If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Find me. Time after time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting for you. Time after time, 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 time after time.
I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous, and I'm a little sad, and I'm very happy to see all of your faces out there. It's very tempting when writing your final sermon for a place to try and say everything there is to say, to say goodbye, to offer explanations, to tell every story that needs to be told. And the fact of the matter is, we can never tell every story that needs to be told. We can only live the story that we are in now. And as we do that time after time, we run into the age-old human question, who am I and what am I doing? We were on the path, and suddenly we're not. We get lost, or at least we think we do. But time after time, we return to ourselves. We may not find the exact same self we wandered away from, yet somehow we are always the same person we've always been. As the scene from Waking Life, one of my favorite movies, told us, we become different people several times over in our lives. And yet we remain quintessentially ourselves. I remember my mother's way of saying this. That was in a previous life. She'd talk about something from years past that seemed about as distant from her current life as the baby in the photo from the adult woman in the coffee shop. And the fiction she'd used to link one to the other was a truth disguised as a joke. That was indeed a previous life. We live many lives in one journey in this body. I've had quite a few myself. I've lived as a waiter, an educator, a nonprofit administrator, a minister, as a Delacian and a Parisian, as a drag celebrity in New Orleans, and a stepdad in Broken Arrow. As someone who could bike 30 miles in a day, and as someone who needs a cane to walk 30 yards. I've often traded places with myself as I move through roles, ages, and stages of life. I've done so just within this church community quite a few times, from babe in the nursery to preteen babysitter on parents' night out, from cherub to children's to youth choir, then years later to Yahweh member, from youth group member to youth advisor, from lay leader to minister. And at each of these transition points, I've had to figure out the story that links one side to the other and strings them all together. How is the person before you today identical to the baby 36 years ago? And how have I reinvented myself through the ages and stages of my life while keeping some stable sense of who I am? Indeed, how do any of us? Reinventing ourselves is not a predictable process with a clear endpoint. Like scientists doing a new thing, inventing a new thing, we experiment. We find what works and what doesn't. We adjust our approach accordingly. We do the best we can with what we have, and if it doesn't work, we try again. We can't know who we will be on the other side of our experimentation, and that makes reinvention a pretty terrifying prospect. We don't tend to change ourselves just for fun, because we are creatures of habit. We do it because the way we've been isn't working anymore, and it's too uncomfortable to stay as we are. Necessity is the mother of reinvention. As a member of this church, you may have felt that motivating discomfort at some point if you've been here for any length of time. You may have started off as a parent, ushering your children through the religious education program, trying to get them into adulthood with all the skills they would need, and then found you didn't know what to do once they were gone, and using those skills successfully. Empty nest syndrome is a real thing. My oldest just moved out, so this is very fresh in my mind. Why stay in the children's wing when you had no children? Maybe it was time to branch out and venture up the ramp. Maybe join the criminal justice team or pack some grocery bags with our community resource bank. It was probably a new and uncomfortable situation as you realized that there were many people in this church you did not know and who did not know you. Or perhaps you were a member of house, building and fixing things with skilled hands and strong body, but now your arthritis has gotten bad and your stamina isn't what it used to be. You still want to be of service, but the way you used to do it doesn't work anymore. So what do you do now? Maybe you go work at the book table. And again, you find there are people in this church who have no idea who you are. And you have no idea who they are, and you've both been here for 40 years. Maybe you're a friendly soul who's become someone who needs a friend. Or maybe you are a justice team member who is ready to step off and work with the little kids. It's difficult when our roles change, especially when our environment or our community is changing as well. We experienced such a moment in this church almost 11 years ago, in the fall of 2008, when New Dimensions joined All Souls. This joining of religious and racial cultures was a brand new experiment, and we had no roadmap for it. It happened so fast, people on both sides said that it was hard to know who we were and where we were going. The already here Unitarian Universalists tended to feel a mix of discomfort and guilt for being uncomfortable. The Unicostals felt at once a need to be here and a difficulty enduring the microaggressions that came of the guilt and confusion of those who were already here. And I admit that I was one such person before I knew the whole story. I'm a Taurus. I don't react well to change at first. And change occurred for me in a jarring and confusing way because, you see, I had journeyed back to Tulsa after a long time away and spent a year here in my mid-20s getting my head on my shoulders, or trying to anyway. And then I moved back to New Orleans in June of 2008. And I came back to visit in October And I went to the 11:30 service because that's what I always did. I would sleep in and I'd go to the 11:30 service because it was the same service. Well, I walked in and it was not the same service. And I was rather startled. It was like, what is happening? This is interesting, but also really uncomfortable. And who am I? Where am I? Is this what they mean when they say you can't go home again? But in all seriousness, I walked away feeling confused and sad and not knowing if this was my church anymore. And there is in that admission a universal experience of the disappointment of leaving home and coming back to find that it has changed while you were gone. We look for consistency and constancy and something to return to, but we don't always find it where we expect to. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said that you can't step in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. The river has had different water flowing through it, and some rains, and some mud, and some life, and some death since last you met. And you, likewise, have been changed by the life you've lived since then. Some people thought that the 2008 changes in this church were an indictment of who we were before, when really they were an opportunity to try something new and to live into the values that were already here as religious liberals who claim that all are welcome, and we need not believe alike to love alike. And so I realized that there was a both and, a yes and, in this difficult time. Yes, my church was different, and that wasn't a bad thing. Yes, I couldn't come home again to the home that I had known before, but I also couldn't help but come home on this hallowed ground that remained quintessentially itself, no matter what our worship services looked like, or who came and went, or how we evolved and what growing pains we had. I came to honor what was and what is. And as I learned the whole story of how it all happened, I was moved beyond words at what love beyond belief really means, because it doesn't mean always being joyful and always being in a state of fun, in a state of celebration. It sometimes means digging in and doing the deep, painful work of running up against yourself and running up against your prejudices and running up against all the things inside of you that you maybe don't want to look at. But once you look at them, you can change them and you can reinvent them. And when I accept change and reinvent myself, I am better able to live in the present and enjoy my life and have fun and celebrate with all of you. I'm better able to be here and now rather than wishing my life was the way it used to be or fearing for what it will be in the future. We're on a constant journey of becoming, individually and together, as a church and as a world. We're always seeking and returning to ourselves, experimenting, recreating, reinventing. And as we do, we make this world a fuller reflection of the whole and the holy, riding along on this blue planet, which is spinning among so many others that make up an infinity we can't even conceive of. And yet each of us is an integral part, just as every cell that makes up a body. You are a microcosm of the cosmos. This is a microcosm of the universe. You are loved and you are love. So play your part and trust the current. the river of life will keep carrying you back to yourself through every incarnation and reinvention. And if I keep going, I'm going to do the thing where I try to say everything in one sermon. And so I will say this again. You are loved, and you are love, and I love you.
You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.